I'm Kalila Reynolds and welcome to Taking Stock. We're bringing you all the latest business news and telling you how it will affect you and your money. So come on, let's get this money.
First up, COVID-19 has affected many businesses across the island, the manufacturing industry no exception. We'll hear from one of the country's top business leaders, chairman of Wisynco Group, William Mahfood. And later, the analysts weigh in on the latest market developments. With almost every sector in Jamaica affected by COVID-19, the Jamaican dollar last week hit a record low against the US. Will it spiral further? And financial stocks have lost billions in value since the announcement that they're suspending dividends for the rest of the financial year. We'll discuss. But first, here's What's Hot, brought to you by Jamaica Money Market Brokers, your best interest at heart. Several food chains have announced temporary layoffs and pay cuts as revenues have been cut in half and worse over the past 2 months. Mother's has closed its 18 stores island-wide for 30 days starting May 1. The company says it suffered a 70% reduction in business with the closure of its school canteens, no more patty deliveries to hotels, and overall fewer customers. 900 staff and 200 vendors for Mother's are now out of a job. Meanwhile, Restaurant Associates Limited (RAL), the franchisees for Burger King, Popeyes, and Little Caesars Pizza, say they're allowing staff to take any unused vacation with pay or voluntary leave of absence without pay. Employees will see pay cuts, with the executive team receiving the highest percentage cut. And local KFC and Pizza Hut operators Restaurants of Jamaica has also indicated that the company may have to consider cutting managers' salaries and laying off staff. Managing Director Mark Myers says sales have plummeted 50% as a result of shorter opening hours from the curfew and loss of customers at restaurants near call centers and tourism businesses. Over in the U.S., more than 30 million people have now filed for unemployment benefits. The U.S.'s unemployment rate for April is slated to come out this week. Analysts are projecting that it could be as high as 20%, a figure not seen since the Great Depression of the 1930s. Back in Jamaica, a task force has been set up to focus on restoring economic activity following the fallout due to COVID-19. Finance Minister Dr. Nigel Clark chairs the task force, which includes 22 persons from academia as well as the public and private sectors. Dr. Clark says the recovery of all jobs lost due to COVID-19 is high on their agenda. The work of the task force will complement the temporary cash flow measures being rolled out under the $10 billion CARE program to assist individuals and businesses impacted by the pandemic. Meanwhile, the Health and Wellness Ministry has spent $2.5 billion to respond to COVID-19 so far. That's 90% of its $2.8 billion budget. Negotiations are underway with the Finance Ministry for more money to be made available over the next 6 months. The revelation comes as the number of confirmed cases in the island cruised past 400. The 24-hour curfew in St. Catherine, the epicenter of the virus, was lifted on May 1. In the meantime, Finance Minister Dr. Nigel Clark says the International Monetary Fund, IMF, has responded favorably to Jamaica's request to access their Rapid Financing Instrument, RFI. Jamaica is seeking more than $500 million from the fund. Dr. Clark says the country's application is expected to be before the IMF Executive Board in a matter of weeks, with the government now entertaining missions from the fund. The RFI provides rapid financial assistance to IMF member countries facing urgent balance of payment requirements without the need for a full-fledged program. And those funds can't come soon enough, as the Jamaican dollar has slipped to its weakest point against its U.S. counterpart, selling for a record $144 on average on Friday. The closure of the tourism industry, along with declines in remittances, both stemming from the onslaught of COVID-19, has slowed the flow of foreign exchange into the island. This was the second time in 2 days that the Jamaican dollar hit a record high against the U.S. On April 29, the weighted average selling rate for the U.S. dollar was $143.23. The last time the currency hit a peak was on February 13, when it traded at $142.58 before regaining value to $134.71 by April 1. In other news, Digicel says it's implementing proposals to reduce its debt and financing costs and extend its debt maturities. The move follows overwhelming support from its debt holders for the proposals announced last month. On April 30, the group announced details of a proposed scheme of arrangement in the Bermudan courts in connection with Digicel Group 1 Limited, an intermediate financing holding company. Digicel says the scheme has the support of more than 97% of its bondholders. It adds that light-touch joint provisional liquidators will be appointed to oversee its implementation to ensure a seamless transition. Digicel says the process will not impact its day-to-day operations, staff, suppliers, customers, or any of its activities. The scheme is the next step in the company's restructuring plan, which was first announced on April 1. The plan includes asking bondholders to take a $1.7 billion haircut. What's Hot was brought to you by Jamaica Money Market Brokers, your best interest at heart.
And when we come back, Wisynco Chairman William Mahfood joins us.
This segment of Taking Stock is brought to you by Bulwark Insurance Agent. Insurance made easy.
Welcome back to Taking Stock. Restaurants, bars, schools, and hotels are all closed in efforts to contain the spread of COVID-19. On the other hand, many people have been stocking up on food at home. How is major food and beverage manufacturer Wisynco faring? I spoke to Chairman of Wisynco Group, William Mahfood.
Welcome to Taking Stock, William. Good to have you on.
Thank you, Kalila.
How you been holding up times?
Well, as you can see, I've changed my look. I have a COVID beard, I guess you could say. I've been going into the office a couple of days a week and, trying to show, because we have a lot of people still on the front line, our production people, our distribution and operations people. They're still all involved on a day-to-day basis. We have to work 24 hours a day to maintain, fulfillment of our products to the market. It's been challenging. I had one daughter who had the virus she was in New York.
Really?
I have another daughter who, she's a doctor at the Hartford Hospital in Connecticut, and she's actually working in ICU for the last 5 weeks. So she's been, one of those doctors who have to intubate the patients and put them into comas and then monitor them and so forth.
Oh.
So she's seen a lot of hardship and challenge. Like
That must be scary to have a child who is in the medical profession at this time. Where did you say she was? Connecticut?
She's in Hartford, yeah.
Wow.
She was very nervous at first, and I spoke to her and I said, listen, in every sphere of life, you're going to go through challenging times. And I said, just face it with the reality that this is what you're destined to do and what you've been called for. And she's done a very, very good job. She's been acknowledged by the Connecticut medical, I think, fraternity in a paper she wrote. So it's been challenging. It's been challenging.
I can only imagine. So tell us about the operations there at Wisynco. You said that some of your staff you still have to go in to actually make the products to manufacture.
Right.
So how have your operations been affected?
Our distribution is still operating as usual. We have customers now more than ever who need, products, and we have smaller windows in St. Catherine, for example, to deliver during which we can deliver. Island-wide, we also have our customers operating in shorter hours because of the curfews. And so we have had to adjust to be able to fit their needs. We have seen a decline in demand somewhat. We're seeing, slightly different consumer patterns. So people are buying more at grocery stores, less on the road, with schools closed. So the consumption patterns have definitely been impacted by this virus. I expect that, over the next I would say, few weeks, we need to, one of the things that I'm now really focusing on is how do we as a country and our economy get back to work? I mean, I was telling the Minister of Finance this morning that just yesterday I spoke to a restaurateur with 2 restaurants, and she was concerned about having to close one and keep one open because she couldn't maintain the operations in both. And, you know, we have cases like that all across Jamaica, I guess all across the world at this point in time, but in Jamaica, especially small business people, the people who are vendors selling on the side of the street or in schools, all of these people, we need to get them really engaged, because they don't have the wherewithal of a Wisynco to be able to sustain, long-term shutdown. So it's time for us to really consider taking all of the health considerations into consideration. How are we going to get Jamaica back up and running? Because the wheel is going to take some time to turn. You know, it's not going to happen overnight.
Where do you fall on this divide, William? This conversation that's going on here and abroad about opening back the economy or closing the economy. I saw that full-page ad written by John Mahfood. What's the relation, by the way? Is that your...
He's a distant cousin.
A distant cousin?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. I saw that full-page ad taken out by him in the papers, another business leader, and he is on the side of making sure that economic activity continues as much as possible. Where do you fall on that? Because it's a delicate balance.
It is. And you know, taking into consideration all of the health concerns. And as I said, I have my own daughter who is a health professional, and I know the risk of, not following certain practices. But I think that the time has come where we have to say, okay, for the elderly and the people who have health challenges, those people have to be quarantined. And then for everybody else, we need mandatory social distancing to some extent within reason. We need to have, everybody wearing masks. My daughter shared with me a file that showed if you and I both wearing masks and one of us has COVID, the likelihood of the other person catching it is less than 2%. So it's important that we put these protocols, protocols in place, and follow them while we continue to look at how do we get the people back to work, get the construction sites open, get start to think about small restaurants and cook shops and bars. Rural Jamaica needs outlets for a lot of their agricultural produce. And if we don't get, some of these people back up and running, it's going to take years and years of hardship for us to get back to where we were.
Yeah.
So I think it's a balance. I think we have to find that balance, and quickly.
Absolutely. I saw an article, it was a letter in one of the papers recently, and the author of the letter was saying for many people, they have to decide between death by hunger or death by coronavirus. And so, like you said, very, very tenuous line that has to be walked.
It is. And we don't have, as a country where you see the U.S. just approved another a bill yesterday in Congress for support to consumers. We don't have the balance sheet or the size of the economy that the U.S. has, where we can give away huge amounts of money to people. So we have to operate in the realities that exist in Jamaica. And I think we are now at that point where we have to say what is going to be in the country's best interest, in the country's health, and also not only in our physical health as people, but also in economical health.
I think since your views are informed by your daughter who is in the medical profession, it sounds to me like you're falling more on the side of do whatever is necessary in order to alleviate or slow the spread, bring down the curve as they keep saying, and then when we're out of the woods, then resume full economic activity, as opposed to what John, for example, might be saying.
Right. I think, as I said, you have to find that balance. I think we're going to have, cases and community spread. We need to try and minimize it within the context of, like the curfew hours that we now have, say for example in St. Catherine, when they first announced the 2 days for shopping, I tried to, I sent out an email, for example, to the Attorney General, and I said, we have 700,000 people approximately resident in Portmore and Spanish Town. And there are about 40 large customers who support those communities. It is impossible in 2 days to have 700,000 people purchase their requirements from 40 customers. So I said it's impractical. And a lot of those people in those communities shop in the Kingston and St. Andrew area, many of them downtown. Limiting their access to downtown and to those areas to shop means that you're going to even make the matters more tenuous. So I think that realization after last week came and the Prime Minister adjusted the hours. But I think we need to appreciate that, many Jamaicans what their business or revenue that they generate today or tomorrow is what they're using to live by this week. And so if you take away their ability to earn, hustlers, as we said, the people who sell on the street corners, those people are a huge part of our economy, and we need to ensure that they can continue to maintain some level of income so that they can provide food and the requirements for their families.
Yeah, and your factory, your headquarters are there in St. Catherine, so yes. Many of your workers are affected.
Right. Very early in this whole event, we started working from home. So our administrative and non-essential staff, almost 90% of them are working from home, as I am. We have our frontline staff, which are the salespeople and the merchandisers. They're in the market. We've given, all of them the proper, practices and we're doing ongoing training, the protocols to follow in terms of how they must manage themselves, giving them masks, giving them gloves, hand sanitizer, for example. We've put inside our factories and operations wash stations at literally every 20 feet. We've put hand sanitizers and we've given everybody masks. Mm-hmm. The biggest challenge we have is reinforcing people to wear the masks. And I walked to the warehouse twice this week and I had to be telling people, listen, we give you the mask and they have it underneath their neck or whatever. Yes. I said, you have to keep wearing the mask. There's a purpose for it, But that's part of the reinforcing and education, I think, as a country, we're going to have to start to be aware of.
Yeah, and the BPO sector has been affected. They've been ordered on a 14-day shutdown now. I don't know what the situation is like in manufacturing plants, how close your workers are together, but I heard some news recently that in the United States, Tyson Chicken, for example, they're closing down their manufacturing plant because of the spread in those types of areas. Have you contemplated, what it might come to in a manufacturing plant that Wisynco has?
We put some other protocols in place. We operate on a 3-shift system, and what we've done is we've created a 4th shift. So we effectively have 1 shift actually away from the office or away from work in those critical areas. In the event that we have, like one person comes up with the virus and we have to quarantine a team, we will then have a 4th shift that we can pull in after disinfecting and cleaning down the entire operation to allow us to not have those type of challenges. So between every shift, we do disinfecting of all the common communal areas. In the offices, like in the dispatch office, in the warehouse, we do disinfecting. Everybody is mandated to wear a mask. And so I think if we follow these types of practices, not only as a company, but I think if we are guided by the Ministry of Health, as we are, to continue to follow these types of practices, we can get to a point where we can resume some level of normalcy.
Mm-hmm. You think the government is doing a good job in handling the situation so far?
You know, I have to be honest with you. I've said this to many people. It is ever change. It's so fluid and dynamic that it's hard to predict what's going to happen from day to day. I think given the circumstances, I would have to say they've done a good job to this point.
Mm-hmm. I want to talk as well about some of your results. When we initially booked this interview, it was very different times, William. Actually, I got some of your products, your new product, the sparkling cran water.
I have mine, I'm always with it.
And let me tell you, this product here, I have to hide them so that I could have at least one left for this particular interview because everybody loves it. I had to hide it at the office, had to hide it at my house so that they didn't drink out all and I can have at least one more left. So this is one of the new products that Wisynco has brought out. Was that in the second quarter? I saw some reference to the second quarter.
Yes, we launched it late last year, which would have been about second quarter of 2020. It has had widespread acceptance. We took a long time in developing that product, and I mean that's one of the things, you know, as a country, as a company, the attributes of our team is developing and innovating new products, and the sparkling cran water is one of those that has been a tremendous new product.
Yeah, I can testify. It tastes good, man.
Yeah.
But coming back to COVID as well, to both operations and what's going on now with COVID-19, you all had anticipated to roll out a new factory. Not a factory. The energy plant, right? Has that been impacted? Have you had to delay that commissioning because of what's going on now?
We were just waiting on the final sign off by the minister for the license back in I want to say early March, and I know Minister Williams signed that off. It's currently being I'm pretty sure it's up and running right now. I mean, today I can't say for certain, but I know that they had some work to do with JPS to integrate it, because while we are running that energy plant, we're still on the JPS grid. So they were working on the integration with JPS. I don't know if there was any further delays on that, but I'm pretty sure that it's operational. And I think in the next quarter is when we'll start to see the real savings from that. So the quarter just finished March, there really won't be any material savings from it. But going forward on a quarterly basis, we'll see that.
So by what percentage do you expect your energy bill to be reduced because of the plant?
I think the estimate was that we would save about a little over $1 million US per year. So 100 and something million, our energy cost. Yeah, so our energy cost is about 20%, of our energy, total energy cost.
That's significant. Yeah, that's very significant.
It is.
Yeah. Yeah. So looking at
it's significant bottom line savings, and I think the payback on the machine is about 3 years, based on what I recall.
Right. So looking at your second quarter results as well, William, give me some of the highlights of that. This would have been for the quarter ended December, before all of this happened with COVID-19.
We had a very good quarter. We did have a provision for the styrofoam closure of our styrofoam factory. So I think it was the first quarter we actually had, on a year-over-year basis, for a long time, we had a slightly lower profit. But that was because of that one-off provision. Overall, revenue growth was on target. For December year, and I think, or for the quarter, I think we ended up at a revenue growth of close to 25%, 26%.
Wow.
So we're maintaining the targets sort of we had set for ourselves. Some of that is based on the new portfolios that we have in terms of Worthy Park sugar and spirits, and Jamaica produces snacks, the St. Mary snacks. And a lot of it is organic growth. So we're still seeing significant organic growth right up until March, when this slowdown started. our March quarter results, we actually have our board meetings next week, and those results will probably be disclosed to the exchange the following week. Where, not, we had about 3-4 weeks of March where we were impacted by the virus, but it's still going to be better than last year. It's really from now going forward, and some of the measures we've taken are looking at non-essential expenditures, reducing things like overtime, anything that is, we've cut back on some of our above the line marketing expenses, promotion, things that we can't generate any value out of. So those non-essential expenses we've had to cut back on in order to maintain our profitability.
Just making sure that I heard you correctly, you still expect to outperform the similar period last year despite what's going on with COVID-19?
In our top line, revenues for sure are going to be, for March quarter, should be better than last year. It's really...
and the bottom line?
The bottom line is going to be, I haven't seen the final numbers yet. I think it'll be challenged because there are going to be likely some impairments for outstanding, credits, accounts receivable, and so forth for customers that could be potentially at risk. So I know that the accountants and the finance people are going through, in a fine-tooth comb now, looking at those areas. But I still feel fairly confident. The company is holding its own. As I said, I think a big part of it is that what happens in the next 6 weeks in Jamaica, what happens with things like, I know schools won't be able to reopen, but what happens with small community shops, what happens with bars and those type of places, vendors, people who sell on the side of the street, those are all our constituents and our customers. And I think if we don't get those people back to turn the wheel of the economy in the next 6 weeks, then I think every business in Jamaica will be impacted in a negative way.
You mentioned about the styrofoam plant. Any plans to repurpose that plant, or what is just a complete loss?
Well, we've provided 100% for it in terms of the cost of labor and the capital cost. We have had some preliminary discussions with the government on some tax incentive because of the write-off. I think it was close to about 300 or 400 million that we provided for. Whether or not that happens, the building itself and the facilities, we're looking at the possibility of utilizing for further manufacturing. So over the course, we already have in place plans for major expansion in our manufacturing coming in this next 12 months. Designs have been done for new factory. We're putting in close to 200,000 square feet of building. We're just waiting on the final approvals and for the contractor to be assigned or to be appointed. Once those expansions start, then I think, and the market starts to reopen, we will have within 12 to 18 months, we will see significant impact from some of those expansions. So we're not slowing down. We're still very, very optimistic about the future of the economy in Jamaica. And so we're still going ahead with all the plans.
Well, I wish you all the best, William.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
When we come back, I've got your market recap, and the analysts are standing by. This segment of Taking Stock was brought to you by Bulwark Insurance Agency. Insurance made easy. Time now for your market recap, brought to you by Sagicor Investments. Think wealth, think Sagicor Investments.
The Jamaica Stock Exchange continued its decline last week, with the combined index falling nearly 4%. 98 stocks traded across both the main and junior markets of the JSE for the week ending Friday, May 1, 2020. 36 advanced, while 51 declined and 11 traded firm. Nearly 248 million shares changed hands on the Jamaican dollar market, totaling $813 million. Wigton Wind Farm ordinary shares traded the most, with nearly 71 million shares changing hands. The stock gained 1 cent to open this week at 70 cents. Radio Jamaica traded the second highest, taking up 27% of market volume. The stock traded firm to close last week at $1.29. And Trans-Jamaican Highway rounded out the volume leaders, with people buying and selling 44 million shares in the company. Trans-Jamaican Highway lost 4 cents to close at $1.34. Turning to the top advancers now, led by Key Insurance Company, which jumped 48% to close the week at $7.27. Key Insurance gained 200% in April, following their takeover by Grace Kennedy in late March. SSL Venture Capital Jamaica followed, with its share price jumping nearly 30%. The stock closed last week at 92 cents. And to round off our top advancers, Fosrich Company gained nearly 24%. Fosrich ended the week at $3.89. On the losing side now, General Accident Insurance Company JA fell 17% to close the week at $4.14. JMMB Group 7.25% also took a hit, down nearly 16% to end last week at $1.60. And Caribbean Cream also fell nearly 16%, down to $2.15. Taking a quick look at the overall month of April, the main index declined by 4%. However, the junior market index gained 4%, the financial index lost 5%, and the manufacturing and distribution index inched forward by 0.01%. Key Insurance was the month's standout, tripling in value from $2.30 to $6.92. Lighting company Fosrich, another notable advancer, up 48%. And Select Fund Manufacturing and Distribution clawed its way back up from 62 to 88 cents, but is still below its listing price of $1. Notable decliner in April was Pulse Investments, down 37% after its stock split in March. Pulse starts May's trading at $2.03. Market Recap was brought to you by Sagicor Investments. Think wealth, think Sagicor Investments.
This segment of Taking Stock, The Analysts, is brought to you by Ideal Portfolio Services and NCB Capital Markets. Welcome back to Taking Stock. I've got a team of analysts to examine the week in business. We're joined by Senior Wealth Advisor at Ideal Portfolio Services, Orick Angus, Manager of Portfolio and Asset Management at NCB Capital Markets, April Walters, and later on, Senior Business Reporter at the Gleaner newspaper, Stephen Jackson, will join us.
Hi, April. Hi, Orick.
Hi, Kalila. Good day.
Hi, Kalila.
Stephen should be joining us in just a few, so I'll accept to the group once he joins. But let's start by talking about the Jamaican dollar, because it hit another historic low last week. It's now at 143 and change to the US dollar. April, why is that?
We've been hearing a lot of talks about the FX rate, and of course, understandably, and I believe the governor spoke a little about it in your last show as well. The liquidity is tight. USD liquidity is tight, and a lot of the major USD inflows we had expectations for that are also seasonally expected in the June quarter aren't occurring. That's tourism. Our tourism sector has basically come to a halt now because of the coronavirus situation, and at the same time we have a slowdown remittances. A better understanding of what's occurring with remittances is that persons and a lot of, especially the US, a lot of persons in the US, that US has record high in terms of unemployment claims. So persons' income has basically slowed down, come to a halt, persons have lost jobs, and so that has also slowed down their ability to transfer any money to persons locally in Jamaica, especially from the diaspora. So we're seeing a slowdown in remittances as well, tourism inflows. And even though the BOJ has come and announced that they have been prohibiting any USD transactions in the capital market space for now, the demand is still there because we do have our overall operational activities in the sector to continue. Even though seasonal demand may be slowed because a lot of manufacturers and a lot of persons who would have demanded US dollar at this time are products. So in terms of the importation of raw materials, which is what the US dollar demand would have been for, might have slowed. The liquidity in the US dollar market is so tight that this has been constricting whatever movement we would have expected, more favorable movement we would have expected in the dollar at this time.
Yeah, so those are all legitimate points. Tourism has come to a halt. Remittance is another major source of foreign exchange. Orick, do you see the dollar sliding even further in coming months?
Yes, I do actually, and I agree with what April said earlier. It's obvious, it was obviously bound to happen with regards to what's happening now. Tourism have slowed, come to an halt. There is no traveling going on. Remittances are low, so all these are what we would have depended on for our foreign exchange earnings. Now, if you take into perspective the level of uncertainties that we're dealing with, it should continue for some time. And if you look at the basic fundamentals of demand and supply, where there are more demand in the economy than the supply, then it should continue to weigh down on the Jamaican dollar for some time as soon. And even after we get over this global pandemic, it should still lurk around for some time, because I don't sense that things will normalize right there and then or right after. It should take some time before things start to pick up back. So even after, tourism will remain low for some time. People will not travel for reasons that are not important. And then, as April mentioned, the US, we depend highly on for foreign exchange earnings. Their economy has been impacted significantly. So I foresee that the level of remittance that usually come in, won't see that in the future for some time.
Someone told me today that they saw an American Airlines flight from Miami to Jamaica for $3,000 and odd US dollars.
Really?
Yeah, I was surprised that they're even flying.
3,000.
But
wow.
I guess,
yeah, that's the first thing that came to mind. They're even flying. Much less price.
Yeah. So imagine supply and demand, huh? Do you guys have any predictions as to where the dollar might reach?
I mean, it's a little difficult to say at this time, because a lot of factors can come in. For example, the Bank of Jamaica deciding whether it's going to step in and have its foreign exchange interventions through its deficit instruments in order to temper any sort of tight liquidity conditions. But that's usually determined if they see any type of heightened volatility. So we don't know if, based on whatever the Bank of Jamaica decides to do over the next quarter, whether that can temper any sort of further sliding in the dollar. But that would also be, I mean, demand is not really going to worsen because economic activity has essentially slowed down and in some areas come to a halt. So it's more of those external interventions that can assist with whatever movement we expect over the next quarter, in my opinion.
Yeah,
I agree.
And like Richard Biles said on this program last week as well, the government has applied to the IMF for that rapid financing instrument. Once that's approved, if it's approved, which it seems likely it will be approved, we'll have an extra 550 million US dollars in the system. Let's look at, speaking of the Bank of Jamaica, another major thing that developed over the past week and a half or so, and that was the suspension of dividends by financial institutions. That announcement made by the Bank of Jamaica on Friday before last it would have been. Orick, have you noticed any reaction by the market to that announcement? What has happened since then?
The financial stocks per se have pulled back significantly as investors try to seek other alternatives in terms of dividend paying stocks, and that's obviously because they realize that the remaining dividends or the expected dividends that they will be depending on for the remainder of the financial year is not going to come. So it's like, in addition to the risk that comes with investing in the stock market, they have to go out there and seek either one, to compensate these dividend losses or expected dividend losses into capital appreciation, or you buy other dividend paying stocks within different sectors. Because another thing is that I think most investors are of the impression that it's every company on the stock exchange dividends that were being suspended by the DOJ, and it's not only for the financial or depository taking institutions. So that is good for us to clear up as well, that there are other options on the Jamaica Stock Exchange that one can look for, and we as investment practitioners can help clients and other players in the market to look to those options, and even probably look at other alternatives like preference shares per se, for example.
Preference shares. Explain why you would look at preference shares as an alternative.
I mean, preference shares, you won't get any level of capital appreciation from that, but it does pay consistent dividends. And then you have to also put into consideration that preference shareholders are usually the group of investors that comes in the middle, that's about between the bond holders and the common shareholders. So apart from the depository institutions who offer preference share out there, like JMMB, there are other companies that investors can use to substitute for those options. So like, for example, there is JPS and you have Epley preference share. That's if you can get them. So those are, but I'm just saying that those are other alternatives that investors can look for.
All right. Let's welcome Stephen Jackson to the program. Hi, Stephen.
Hi, it's good to be here.
Stephen is a senior business reporter at the Gleaner newspaper. But let's make it clear, his views on this program are his own, right, Steve?
Exactly.
All right, good. So you had an article in I think it was the Financial Gleaner recently, or business pages of the Gleaner, about the reaction of the public to the announcement no dividends by financial institutions. What did you notice? What did you notice from shareholders and the reaction of the market to that announcement?
The financial stocks dipped at almost twice the rate of the overall market this week, signaling that that the market was repricing the total return to shareholders. And if you're not paying dividends, then clearly there has to be some kind of repricing of these stocks. So they took a hit. The view of the small shareholder and the Jamaican hedge fund, pretty much the same. I mean, people want the dividends, But I think for the trader that's in the market daily, it's a beautiful opportunity, because the stocks are being repriced and it's giving more opportunity on the upside, But if you're a pensioner, it's not necessarily the best thing.
April, Stephen mentioned pensioners, and there are others as well who I saw a letter in the papers recently as well. One of them said, why stop dividend payments? People aren't too happy about this news. Shareholders aren't too happy about this news. Do you think it was a reasonable thing for the Bank of Jamaica to ask of the banks to do?
Understandably so. The Bank of Jamaica's move would be guided towards the position as a central bank, which is to maintain financial stability in the market. Understandably, one and two persons are going to be upset because dividend income is for a lot of persons a key income that they're generating for their own primary expenses. And so, yes, understandably, they're going to be upset. But then there are alternatives, like Orick mentioned, preference shares. Preference shares actually provide stable income for persons at this time versus actually owning common shares, which actually puts you a little lower, actually lower in ranking relative to a preference shareholder. So it can be beneficial to you if you're so income driven at this time. I think this is the time now where investors may have to now position themselves, shift their overall investment strategy and portfolio towards what they need right now the most. And if it's stable income at this time, then this may be an opportunity for them to kind of say, all right, you know what, I'm not going to be getting this income for this year. Maybe it's a time to shift now into preference shares, other assets that are going to provide them with the stable income that they desire. But the Bank of Jamaica, as its role as the central bank, has to maintain some level of financial stability and protection of liquidity, even though he would have stated that at this time it's not a severe situation. Better we are proactive than reactive. And so the measure was important in terms of ensuring that the liquidity for the financial and especially key financial institutions was protected.
Mm-hmm. Orick, like you mentioned earlier, it's only the financial stocks that are affected by this decision not to pay out dividends. There are other companies that still will be paying out their dividends. What are some of the high dividend paying stocks that people can look to apart from the preference shares?
Well, apart from preference shares, you can look to you have Jamaica Boilers Group, Carreras. There's Salada Foods if you can get any. You have Grace, Kennedy, and I think Supreme Ventures is also one of them.
Yeah.
Though they might not be as healthy as the Scotia and the Sagicor and the NCB, they still can buffer whatever losses those stocks, offset some of those losses that you would have expect or not get from the financial stocks that you would have previously invested in. But just also to add to what April had said in regards to the BOJ's regulation last week, I think it's a pretty decent move or risk mitigation strategy, and one have to really look at the level of uncertainties that we're dealing with right now and what measures we can put in place before we get to a point where we're not able to adjust these measures. So I do agree with them for now. It's just that we have to just tell ourselves, based on our current situation now, would you rather to take a 7 or 8 months haircut in dividend payments versus wait till next year to make the decision, and then you end up having to hold out for another 2 to 3 years. So, 8 months to me is not bad versus waiting another 2 or 3 years to receive dividend payments.
If I could
what I could understand though, on the contrary, is if they would have incrementally reduced these dividend payments. So for example, or do a little bit more scrutiny in terms of Sagicor, who mentioned that they could have comfortably continue the dividend payout. Maybe a reduction in the amount could be looked at. I mean, versus 100% haircut. It's just something that I recommend.
And they had already decided, Sagicor, that they were.
Right.
They had already announced that they were going to pay out dividends. So,
right.
Stephen, you wanted to jump in there?
Just want to add that I think one of the fears of the central bank is a second wave. I mean, it's all well and good that people say that we are we're meeting all the minimum regulatory requirements for capital and other ratios. But what happens when there's a second wave or a third wave? I mean, these are...
Of the virus, you mean?
Sorry?
Of the virus.
The virus.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And the effect on revenue. And, you know, when you look at NCB's capital market, NCB's capital, yes, it meets the regulatory requirements. You're looking at basically 11%, right? But when you disaggregate the non-controlling interest, it goes to 8-point-something%, right? Now, you might say, oh, well, that's fine, they can raise capital in different ways, but if they don't give out dividends, then, you know, that issue is not such a critical matter at this moment. So, I mean, I do think that there is some merit to what the central bank has done. People call it very contradictory because at the one hand, they're saying that the financial system is healthy, but then why would you stop dividends from being paid out? But I think I think it's very proactive because that second wave is not going to be fun.
I agree.
What do you think? What do you guys think about this debate about reopening the economy? I hear a lot of people business owners are complaining that, you know, they can't sustain for much longer. If you're hearing KFC saying they're not considering layoffs, and KFC is like the Jamaican meal, the Jamaican national dish, and they're considering laying off people. Mothers has laid off temporarily 900 workers for at least the next 30 days. But on the other hand, if we reopen the economy too soon, then we may be seeing the second wave that Stephen has been talking about. As a matter of fact, the first wave isn't even over yet. So let's start with April. April, let me hear your thoughts on that.
I would more think that the government is actually trying to find a more sustainable way to, yes, prevent a further outbreak, prevent things from getting worse, but also finding a sustainable way to open back the economy. I don't think that would necessarily equate to, yes, everything just going back to business as usual. I just think that business as well as the government will just have to take part in collectively understanding that things will just have to change. Business can operate, but businesses are just going to have to operate in a manner that will prevent any further outbreak locally at least. So I think the focus would just be on trying to find a sustainable way. It means that businesses will open back, but you still can't have more than 10 persons in a restaurant at a time. Then I think those are, for example, measures that will just have to be taken because, and I think the Prime Minister would have actually alluded to this already, you know, trying to find a sustainable way to have the economy, yes, continue, but as well as protect the health of its citizens, which is both two very important things, and it's just to find the balance between that at this point. But people just need to understand that it can't just immediately go back to normal. Certainly not for now, certainly not for maybe the next 6 months or so.
Orick, where is that? Open or close?
That's relative because open, but open to what? I mean, technically, to me, right now, we're open. It's just that the borders are closed. But if you open the borders, what are we opening to? Tourism. I don't think anyone will be coming here now or traveling soon. We have to put into consideration that the US is kind of partially on a lockdown as well, based on the magnitude of the situation that they're dealing with. We have to address and put in place our health concerns first, and then we can think about opening up, or what we consider to call opening up fully. Yeah, that's my opinion in a nutshell.
All right, Stephen, let me give you the last word. What are your thoughts on it?
I have nothing additional to say to that. I think they really summed it up, except the only thing I would say is the second wave or different waves are probably going to come from the opening up of the economy, because we're a small island and, you know, we welcome visitors. That's how we earn our foreign exchange. So, you know, I think one of the questions that asking, how is it going to happen? I think the reality is that we're going to have to find a way to live with COVID. And, you know, somebody said that COVID is really SARS #2, but we have to be thinking about SARS number 3. Right? If SARS number 2 was so dreadful as it is right now, we're still going through it. What's going to happen with the next batch? Not even the second wave, third SARS, and then the fourth SARS. So this is really the new normal, right? We need to understand that commerce has to be hand in hand with health. You know, all these concerns. It's never going to get back to normal.
Yeah.
Right?
Thank you all for joining me today. Great having you on.
You're welcome.
Thank you. All right.
Bye, guys.
Thanks, everyone. Let's take our final break. This segment of Taking Stock, The Analysts, was brought to you by Ideal Portfolio Services and NCB Capital Markets. That's our show for this week. Thanks for watching. Make sure you like this video, subscribe to this channel, and of course, share with a friend. Also, check out my other features, Money Mondays JA, Money Moves JA, and What's in It for Me. And follow me on Instagram and Twitter at Kalila Ray. If you want to connect with the analysts this week, check the description box below for their contact information. Tell a friend about Taking Stock. Investing is the new sexy, so let's make it cool to talk about money. I'm Kalila Reynolds. Stay safe.